How many of your clients are you aware of have a management succession plan? And how many know what that is? Do you know what a management succession plan is? What is it?
The manager is who's going to be the next generation running that business.
How would you do that? How would you implement a management succession plan?
You do it internally. You grow those associates over time, allowing them to take on more and more responsibility to the point where you almost push out the upper level of management.
So you want to create a next level of managers. You want to train them. You want to empower them. You want to delegate authority to them. But then beyond that, you need to formalize it in writing. Because if you do all these great things to create your next level of managers, but you haven't formalized it in writing, it's worthless when the widow gets involved, or when the kids get involved, or a trustee who doesn't know the business gets involved. And I've had this happen time and time again. So a management succession plan is an expression in writing of the founder of how to manage the business if I die or become disabled. So we actually create a management succession plan. And it's signed by the founder. And it's adopted by resolution if it's a corporation, by the board of directors, which he is probably the board, or she is probably the board. Or it's adopted by the shareholders if there is no board. Or if it's not a corporation, if it's an LLC, the managers adopt it in a resolution or operating agreement addendum. But the management succession plan is going to say something like this. I've got two people who are running this business. One who's running operations, one who's running finances. This is the small business, real small business. I want them to continue running operations and finances after I'm gone. They're going to be paid their current salary, and they're going to be entitled to receive increases in those salaries every year, unless the economy dictates that they can't be given increases or we have to decrease, which will be determined by a board of directors or a committee that consists of professionals who are going to oversee these managers. But the managers should be able to run day-to-day operations of the business without constant interference or questioning from the overseers, if you will. But they do have an obligation to report, and they do have an obligation to be accountable. How you do it really depends on the business. So you sit down with the founder, and any of us are capable of doing it if we have business acumen, to sit down with a founder and say, who's running the business today? How's the business run? Give me the details. And usually what you'll find is, in the case of real estate development or something like that, the real estate developer's out doing the deals. He's got a person running finances and handling all the books and records. He's got a person managing these deals and taking care of all these deals. That's just one example. I've done management succession plans for probably 30 of my clients recently. It's been a new trend. And how do I do this? I create the plan. It's very detailed. We have the founder sign off on it. But then to make it binding, we put a reference to that plan in their trust, in their revocable trust, which is their estate planning document, which will own the shares of the company after the founder dies or becomes disabled. And the trustee is bound by that. So whoever the successor trustee is or committee of trustees has to abide by this management succession plan. You want to build flexibility into the plan too, so that they're not saddled with somebody who's not performing. But there needs to be some type of a plan in place. And if you have that, and it's integrated with the estate plan, it's binding, and it gives a roadmap to the next level of folks who have to run the business, and it doesn't result in the immediate sale or liquidation of the business. We also want to continue doing this along a time continuum. And then in connection with this, we want to plan for death and disability using shareholders agreements and building in buy-sell provisions into those agreements. So let's look at the timeline. The timelines today, this is the continuum, and the first bullet is the next page, and that's just doing the management succession plan, which is what I was talking about, integrating it with the estate plan. And then an early stage buy-sell agreement would be doing a cross-purchase agreement between two owners. doing an LLC that owns insurance for 3 or more owners, that allows for the insurance to be used to buy out any decedent of the business. And the LLC is sort of a parallel ownership structure to the company that's operating the business. Lots of different structures could be used here, but doing it in the form of a buy-sell agreement and memorializing what the intentions are now. How do you value a business at startup? Margaret, I'm going to pick on you. How do you value a business at startup?
Startup?
Yeah.
It's very difficult. Obviously, depends on what their projections are, if they have a projection.
Do you believe all those projections as a valuation expert?
Typically, it's the hockey stick.
It's the hockey stick,
Yeah.
which means nothing.
Right.
So we don't want to value it based on that necessarily. So what we usually do at the beginning is we'll say, okay, we'll value the shares at book value, but we're going to over-insure. We're going to want to make sure that there's plenty of insurance to cover the family needs of one of the business owners if there's 2 or more business owners. And so we're just going to ballpark it. We're going to say we're going to go out and buy $1 million, $2 million, $5 million of insurance. We're not going to struggle with the valuation immediately. But as the business matures and grows, having an appraiser involved or doing an appraisal of the business becomes more important and more credible in terms of establishing the value. And if somebody dies, building in that appraisal process that we discussed last time is important in the planning. On the continuum along the timeline, building the management team, just as we were talking about a few minutes ago, getting that next generation of management. Every person who's a critical function at the business needs to have a successor. You always have to think about having a successor. We're doing it at this law firm now. It's actually very interesting to watch lawyers do business succession planning, but we're doing it. So in every group, in every practice area, all of us have sort of designated or are bringing in people to help us transition our practices as we get older, because none of us are getting any younger, and we need to do that. And the older folks as well as the mid-level folks are doing that right now. But every business should do that and update the plan from time to time. The advanced estate planning side of it, it's interesting. We're in a state of flux now because everybody's saying that we're going to have tax reform and repeal of the estate tax. Here's my take on that. If the president remains in office, which is questionable based on recent reports, there still will be a vice president who assents to the presidency as a Republican. And the Congress is Republican, at least for the next 2 years. And tax reform is a major component of any legislative strategy that the Republicans are pursuing right now. And in that tax reform package, you can be assured that there will be major changes to the estate tax rules, including repeal of the estate tax. But what people are forgetting is that all of this is done under a budget reconciliation process, which requires that if there's any significant tax decrease without an offsetting revenue increase, then any such tax decrease has to sunset within 10 years. So the Republicans could pass it with a 51 vote majority in the Senate and a majority in the House. They could pass tax reform, but it will sunset in 10 years, which means that any estate tax repeal will be unrepealed, and we'll have the estate tax 10 years from now. So all of us who do estate planning on the advanced level are thinking about ways of minimizing taxes for our clients. One idea, use a 9.9-year GRAT. What's a GRAT? It's a grant or retained annuity trust. You make a gift of an asset to the trust. Hopefully it's deeply discounted today, because we are still allowed to use valuation discounts because the proposed regulations that were proposed by the IRS back in August of 2016 are on a moratorium, as are all other regulations right now. And so in the near future, we don't expect those regulations to be enacted. And if we do something now, we are very confident that anything we do now will be grandfathered in if they change the law later. So we could make a gift to a GRAT, and the GRAT pays back the giver, the donor, an annuity over some period of time, whatever period you set for the GRAT. And you can zero out the GRAT so that no gift is made on the gift. How do you do that? Well, the annuity in a present value calculation essentially equals the value of what you're giving, or maybe a little bit more. And then you've satisfied IRS regulations that allow you to do this. If you die during the period of the GRAT, it's drawn back into your estate. The asset's drawn back into your estate. But if the estate tax is repealed during that 9-year period, then there's no estate tax on it. If you die after that time period, it's out of your estate when the estate tax has been reenacted. So these are just, it's one of many techniques that we're talking with our clients about now, because people are uncertain about what to do, but they don't want to stop their planning, and you shouldn't stop the planning because we're waiting to see what happens with the legislation. It is a good idea to wait a little bit, but waiting too long, the client may die, then you have a different situation on your hands. You may have an estate tax due.